the mayor's 35th community conversation. We aim to go around to all 5 boroughs and switch communities, make sure to hear the voices of the people. There are 3 parts to this community conversation. The first portion, we had the first hour where we had an opportunity to sit down with members of the mayor's office and NYPD to listen to community concerns. Diligent notes were taken down, so in order to make sure that policymakers in City Hall hear issues that matter most to you. The second portion we're going to have is opportunity for the questions that you formulated at your tables to be asked to the mayor and to the dais. The third thing, you'll notice a card in front of you. If your question is not asked, please fill out the card in order to ensure that our office follows up with you directly. We track all the questions that come in within a 2-week time frame. We make sure not only that it's acknowledged, but we send it to the appropriate agency, and we make sure there's a follow-up conversation that you get a response to your issue. So make sure to take the time to fill out the card. It's great to be here in Goddard. It's a great human services organization. It's wonderful to be here in Community Board 7. We have great representation, as I said, from the police department here. We're joined today by Jeff Madry, the chief of the department, Kaz Daughtry, the Deputy Commissioner of Operations for NYPD. We have Deputy Commissioner Mark Stewart, who's the Deputy Commissioner of Community Affairs for NYPD. We have Chief of Patrol Borough Manhattan North, Raul Stephenson. We also have Magje, First Deputy Director, Jill Strashevsky. We have H&H Senior Vice President of Ambulatory Care, Ted Long. Department of Health, the Mental Hygiene Executive Director of the Division of Mental Hygiene, Dr. Jean Wright. Office of Community Mental Health, Deputy Executive Director, Lakeisha Grant. And Gender-Based Violence, Deputy Commissioner for External Affairs and Community Initiatives, Tessa Arasqueta. To my right, we have the Borough President of Manhattan, Mark Levine. We have Gail Brewer, the council member. We have Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel. We are joined by DSS Commissioner Molly Park, DYCD Commissioner Keith Howard, ACS Associate Commissioner Raymond Toomer, New York City Public Schools Chief of Safety Mark Rampersart, NYCHA Executive Vice President Daniel Green. We also be joined by Parks Manhattan Borough Commissioner Tricia Shimamura. We are also joined by New York City Health and Hospitals CEO Matthew Tutmos. We're also joined by the NYPD COs of the 20th Precinct, Deputy Inspector Pun Sullivan. The NYPD 24th Precinct CO, Deputy Inspector Noreen Lazarus, NYPD 26th Precinct Commander, Deputy Inspector Jose Taveras, NYPD Central Park CO, Captain Timothy Magliente, PSA 6 CO, Captain Juan Moran, and Chief Richard Taylor from Community Affairs as well. We're also joined by a community resident, our Commissioner of International Affairs, Ed Mermelstein. And I just want to thank everyone who's here from this wonderful dais. Our run of show this evening, we're going to have an opportunity to listen to the borough president, with our council member and our senator first, and before the mayor arrives. And then when the mayor comes here, we'll make sure he speaks and listen to all the concerns of the community. So I'll just hand it over to the borough president this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kreisman. Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy that Goddard Riverside's opened its doors to us. Shout out to Roderick Jones, who's a phenomenal leader for Goddard Riverside. They do so much for this community. Can we give them a big round of applause? They're awesome. Senior services, housing, and much, much more. We are in the 24th Precinct. We're part of the Manhattan North Borough Command. And I just want to tell you how grateful I am for the current commander of this borough command, Chief Stevenson. Chief, could you just wave so people know you? And one of the best law enforcement leaders I've ever worked with. So, Chief Madry and Commissioner Daughtry, I just want you to duly note that in the record that he's doing great. We actually have, I think, 4 precincts represented here. I think we have the 2-0, the 2-4, the 2-6, and Central Park precinct. We do have good commanders in all of them. But there's a common challenge across all of those precincts, actually all the precincts in Manhattan, which is they are down in staffing relative to a few years ago. I would say on average in Manhattan, precincts are down 25 officers from 5 years ago. So that when I call a precinct commander and I say I have a real problem on a given block and I need more staff representation on the ground, they'll often say, okay, but I'm going to have to take people off another location. This is what we're dealing with in a limited staff environment. This has been years in the making. We currently have 3,000 vacancies approximately in the PD. Maybe the chief will update me or correct me because of early retirements, and resignations. So I want you to bear this in mind tonight. A lot of what we're talking about, we need to fill those vacancies to restore the resources on the ground that many of you are concerned about tonight. This is a community, and I know we're going to hear it tonight, with a lot of concern about homelessness and homeless shelters. I think we all understand that the win-win for everybody is to not have people in homeless shelters, but to have them in permanent housing. This is what we want. This will take creating a lot more housing across the borough and the city. We have a lot more work to do on that. I think we need to keep that in mind as the big picture. But if we do have shelters, as we do, then we have to make sure they're well run. And the truth is we have a spectrum of quality of management in the shelter system, and thinking a lot about how we can have better oversight, good oversight for deliverables and accountability, so that when we have shelters, they're run as well as they can be for everybody, for the residents, for the neighbors, for the city, for the taxpayers, for all of us. Some of the mental health challenges we're dealing with are on the street. There are people who are not sheltered. They're not residing anywhere but in the street. There was a horrible incident actually yesterday. Maybe some of you saw it at the Herald Square subway station on the F train, 33rd Street. A friend of mine actually was pushed onto the tracks. He's currently in Bellevue. He's going to have spinal surgery. There's going to be a big story in the Daily News about it tomorrow. I say because it's personal to me. And this is yet another reminder of our painful failure to bring people in off the streets who should not be on the streets, who should be in for care and treatment, the treatment they need and deserve. And that's not an easy policy to solve. It requires both expanding the treatment options and the resources in our hospitals and permanent residential settings, but also finding a way to bring people in off the street who might not want to be brought in off the street, because that is the nature of mental illness. That's called involuntary removal. We have a mechanism for that, and that is going to be required. Maybe if such an involuntary removal had been applied to the individual who pushed my friend, he wouldn't be in Bellevue right now. So something that we certainly need to talk about and address. Just very quickly, I'm in a battle against scaffolding. I'm bringing this up at a public safety forum because I do believe it directly connects to public safety. And in fact, often we have problems under the darkness of the scaffolding. We have an excessive concentration here on the west side. This problem can be fixed that may be my time. This problem can be fixed by good legislation. We've got to reform Local Law 11. It's way out of date. Some of you are co-op and condo owners. You know this. There is legislation in the city council that's going to be voted on, I believe, in 2 weeks. Gail, maybe you'll update us. That will fix a lot of the problems in scaffolding, that will get them off the street quicker. That's a win for public safety, a win for economic development, and it just makes the neighborhood more beautiful. So thanks to all of you for coming out. I see the mayor's joined us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for doing this forum on the west side, for doing it here at Goddard Riverside. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing us all together. So I'm Gail Brewer, City Council, and I want to echo what the Borough President stated about the wonderful work that Chief Stevenson and the 2-4 and the 2-0 in Central Park and 2-6 all do. They are amazing leaders. I also want to thank Kamar Samuels, who's head of the district schools here. Thank you very much. The superintendent of schools does a great job in District 3. So the issues for me are similar in the sense of, unfortunately, here in the neighborhood in the last couple of months, we've had shootings and punchings and people with mental illness acting completely out of control. And so public safety is number one. It always has been, but it has increased dramatically. And what we're all looking for in terms of solutions is what I think Dr. Katz is suggesting, which is we need a place for those with mental illness to go. Not Rikers, but someplace that is secure, that has the psychiatric support that they need, because they have to get off the street. So I want to say that is my number one request. Number two, I want to indicate that we are very concerned about as we approach closing some of the health and hospital centers. And I'm glad, if it's appropriate for these families, but I want to keep them in the school system. I think that is also part of public safety in my mind, because these kids are going to get a great education on the Upper West Side. So as they move, I want to keep them in the schools. Something very small, but those West Siders and others who have a car and they don't friggin' move it when the street sweeper is coming down the street, for God's sake, move that damn car. Because otherwise, Department of Sanitation cannot clean the streets. So we're going to be ticketing people like crazy who don't do that. E-bikes is a challenge. I think every place I go, it's brought up. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Mira Josie, who's been trying to think solutions. The City Council has been trying to think solutions. I would love to see registration, but thanks to the senator on the state level with license plates. And we also need to have pop wheels or somebody who can take that damn battery, put it in, and get it out so that it doesn't cause a fire, so it's a new battery and not a refurbished battery. I also want to just say that we are working with West Park Presbyterian Church. That is a church on 86th Street. We want to try to make sure that it is kept as a church, and we would love to work with the Department of Landmarks Preservation Commission to make sure that it is not demolition by neglect, but that the local cultural group running them are able to sign off to get the roof fixed. Finally, I want to thank Steve Anderson, who's head of all the block associations here, and Michael Landau, who's head of the COJO. And like the borough president, I really respect Rod Jones, who's head of Goddard Riverside. They have 40 locations at Goddard Riverside. They're big, and they do cradle to grave and a great job. And thank you for our NYCHA leaders, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. State Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel represent the West Side. Good to see everyone. Thank you, Goddard Riverside. I represent the West Side from Christopher Street down in the village up to 103rd, from the gay bars to Zay bars. Yes, that is true. And I just want to say that we need to do our part, Mr. Mayor, in Albany to support your efforts, in particular mental health. And I have a bill, we call it the HELP Act, harnessing the expertise of licensed professionals to expand the pool of mental health professionals who can make that very important determination as to whether somebody should be directed into treatment. We want to expand it from psychiatrists to include licensed social workers, nurse psychiatric professionals, as well as psychologists. We hope to get that done. We hope to get the mayor more money from Albany, too, because he needs it to deal with our asylum seekers and the insurmountable problems that could not be overcome without the assistance from Albany. As you probably can guess, New York City sends more money to Albany than it receives in return. And we have to rectify that, Mr. Mayor. And then finally, I just want to say on e-bikes, I want to thank the council member and her colleagues for the hearing that they had on Priscilla's law at the council. But we need to do that in Albany to ensure that commercial e-bikes are registered, so they have a license plate, so all of our terrific law enforcement can make it possible to get dangerous e-bike drivers off of our streets, and worse, off of our sidewalks. Thank you very much.
Before I hand it over to the mayor, I just want to say thank you very much for Gina Newman and, of course, all the community organizations that are here for making this possible, including our NYCHA leaders, Community Board, and Precinct Council. Thank you.
I thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to a real conversation here in the way we would like to do it, like we've done with over, I don't know, we're 30 what now? 35th town halls, senior town halls, youth town halls. I will be extremely quiet when you ask me a question or the team a question, and we want the same reciprocal response so we could get to the topics at hand. And I just want to give you an overview, because oftentimes when we do these town halls, people often say, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. I inherited a city that was a mess. 40% increase in crime. Our bond ratings were low. No one wanted to get back on the subway system, and we may have forgotten, but COVID was everywhere. Our children were not learning at the levels that they deserve. Businesses were closing down. No one was back in the office spaces. We were not investing in those children who are foster care. 600 to 700 were aging out every year, slipping through the crack, participating in crimes, dealing with mental health issues. NYCHA residents did not have high-speed broadband to do remote learning or telemedicine. Our young people on Rikers Island, there was a pathway. Everyone was talking about closing the building of Rikers Island, and I said we needed to close the pipeline that fed Rikers Island. When I went there, I was on Rikers Island more than any mayor in the history of this city. And when I walk inside those jails and speak with the inmates and the correction officers, the overwhelming number of them were dyslexic, learning disability. The real crime was that we were not teaching them and giving them the opportunity that they deserve. Mopeds was everywhere. Up and down the sidewalks. We know the issue is still here, but we zeroed in. We did not ignore them. We did not ignore the ghost plates that we saw. Gun violence was ripping through our streets. I must have been in office the first month I had to go to the hospital where 11-month-old baby was shot in the head, sitting there with the mother. 2 years and 10 months later, more jobs in our city in the city's history. Crime in the subway system is at a 14-year low if you take away the COVID year. 4.6 million riders. We have 6 felonies on our subway system a day. 20,000 guns removed off our streets. Robberies on the subway system is the lowest in recorded history. August is normally a dangerous month for shootings. It was the lowest in recorded history in the city. We built more housing in year 1, year 2, affordable housing. In those single years, we broke records in the history of the city. We passed historical housing reform in this city. We invested in foster care children, paying their college tuition, giving them life coaches to their 21s and stipends and the support that they deserve. Reduce taxes for working class people. We're going to need the assistance from Albany to get our income tax decrease for those who are at 150% of the poverty line or below. 70,000 illegal vehicles off our street, ghost cars, mopeds, three-wheelers, and remove them off our streets, and many of them were destroyed in the process. Free high-speed broadband for NYCHA residents. More people are participating in our FEPS voucher program in the history of this city. We were able to get Albany to pass real estate reform so we can build more housing in the city. Bond raters who make the determination how well you're managing the money in the city. Increase my bond rating and double down on increasing the bond rating the way we manage the city. We made the city agencies do pegs in the first 2 years, saved us $7.1 billion. 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers that came to the city. I couldn't stop the buses from coming in. It was against federal law. I couldn't allow people to work. It was against federal law. I couldn't even allow people to volunteer and give them a stipend. The federal government said, if you do that, we're coming at you. That's against the law. We had to house, close, educate 40,000 children. Go look at other cities. We don't have people sleeping on our streets, families and children that are migrants and asylum seekers. We treated them with dignity. And the immigration leaders that came to the city to analyze what we're doing, they said, no one is doing what you're doing, Eric, across the entire country. We turned this city around in 2 years and 10 months. Now think about this for a moment. Pound for pound, neighborhood by neighborhood, there is no other neighborhood in this city. You have more judges probably per square block and mile that are releasing people every day onto our streets repeatedly. You have more reporters that have been attacking us that live in this community. When we said, let's have involuntary removal to take people off the street who should not be on the street because we had ridiculous laws that emptied our psychiatric wards and placed people on the street, and we still allow them to walk around. When we tried to do involuntary removal, we were attacked by people in this community that are your writers and reporters and said, Eric is trying to be inhumane. No, inhumane is allowing people to sleep on the street without any dignity and respect. You have more grant writers, more proposal writers, right in this community here, folks, right here. And when I went to Washington 10 times and said we should not be taking $6.5 billion out of our budget to pay for national problems, the city was silent. It was silent. It was silent when I said people should not be living on the streets. It was silent when I said people should not be living in our subway system, when we did scouts and others. It was silent when I said we should not have laws that allow repeated offenders to come into our communities over and over again. We just had a case the other day. A person was arrested with a gun, rearrested with a gun, and let back out again while on 2 gun charges and got caught with another gun. And you go to my district attorneys, we are losing DAs. We are hemorrhaging our entire criminal justice system. We're losing DAs because we have laws that were passed, the discovery laws. If you don't turn in information in a certain period of time, their cases are being dismissed. And I'm not talking about stealing an apple. I'm talking about real cases are being dismissed. Criminal justice system is in 3 sections, folks. Police, court, lawmakers. These guys are doing their job. Our arrests are up. As I said, 20,000 guns off the streets. They're doing their job. But the other aspects of criminal justice, we don't see them. So when we do this meeting with my law enforcement team, you should do a meeting with all our judges. You should do a meeting with all our lawmakers. Tell them about raise the age. Do the analysis of raise the age and how many young people are now being caught with guns and doing shootings right now in the streets. Since raise the age, there's a clear correlation. And they're pushing back on me because I'm saying those who come to this country and committing violent acts and violent gangs should not stay in our country. They should not be attacking migrants, asylum seekers, long-term New Yorkers, undocumented. It's a privilege to be here in this country. And if you violate that privilege, you don't need to be here. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I made it clear when I ran for office. The prerequisite to prosperity is public safety. You deserve to be safe. And you should be angry. But now that angry must turn into a plan. Everyone must be engaged in the 3 parts of criminal justice system. And I'm tired of my cops being beat up. These guys are doing so many overtime hours. Every day, no longer with their family. These young cops want to be home raising a family, and they're doing hours and hours. 3,000 protests we had in this city. We had to beg Columbia University to go on campus to get off those who were spewing hate every day and a level of anti-Semitism that we saw on our college campus. We had to beg NYU. This is what we're up against. So we're going to answer all your questions. But I would feel very good if all my judges were here also. I would feel so happy if all my lawmakers were here as we go back to Albany and start dealing with some of those laws that we are seeing. What is my numbers of shoplifters that we had, Cass?
From the
repeated offenders?
over 500 people arrested for shoplifting and combined arrested are about 7,800.
You hear that number? 500 arrested continuously 7,800 times. 38 people who we arrest for assaulting transit workers were arrested over 1,100 times. And so Officer Joe makes the arrest, goes in front of the court releases him, and you know what, he goes back and do it again. We made a mockery of our criminal justice system. These criminals are laughing at us. Laughing at us. We're going to keep doing our job. But everyone needs to do their job. Not just the police. Everyone must do their job in the criminal justice apparatus. Our laws must be stronger. Our judges must make smarter decisions. And we must make sure that this city is safe. If we're not safe, our children can't go to school, you can't go to work, our family members can't be on the subway system, then we're not in a city that I want to be the mayor of. I committed to keeping the city safe when I was a cop, wearing that bulletproof vest, and I'm going to continue as the mayor of this city. So I want to hear your concerns, hear what we can do better, what we are doing, and how we can continue to make not only the Upper West Side safe, but the South Side, Queens Side, the Bronx Side, this entire city must be safe. We open the floor.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for putting this together. It's very important, all the work that you do. My name is Polly Spain, and I basically want to start out with the gate and say that I didn't hear anyone mention Police Service Area 6 Community Council. You always talk about the 2-4 and the 2-5 in this area, so a lot of issues that we discussed at our table deals with public housing issues, okay? So one of the things that we do need is here to have access so that this way our officers from the PSA 6, okay, can have access to vans. They don't have any vans or equipment to respond to issues. And also we're short of manpower as well. We've been begging for that for years. And along with that goes the fact that we talked about there's no lighting in our buildings. There's scaffolding issues. We have also squatters in the public housing buildings on 93rd Street. So there's a myriad of issues that needs to be addressed. In addition to that, what we're asking you, Mr. Mayor, is how can we, from our public housing community, you understand, get the resources that we need to live in a safer environment? Because everyone on the Upper West Side thinks because there's money here that, you know, there's no problems, okay? But public housing is forgotten, and also our PSA 6 command is forgotten as well. They're treated like a stepchild when it comes to the NYPD, and we feel that that's something that needs to change because we have a great relationship as a community with the PSA 6. So that's why we talked about that. In addition to the schools have cannabis shops surrounding the schools. They need better lighting as well because what happens is that the kids and the parents, again, are being exposed to that type of environment where they shouldn't be. Kids should be able to go to school without smelling weed or having illegal traffic going on around their school. They should be safe. So we would like for you to figure out how we can work with all these agencies here to get what we need so that we can live in a safe environment.
Housing was not ignored in this administration. For the first time in the history, we included housing in our housing plan. We put in free high-speed broadband for housing residents because when I was borough president knocking on doors during COVID, I learned that the children couldn't do remote learning. Parents couldn't receive telemedicine. So we put in free high-speed broadband throughout NYCHA. We're going to expand that to other low-income housing at the same time. And you are right in that you have too many homeless people that are sleeping in your hallways. We did a town hall in Harlem. A resident told me the same thing. We met her the next day, and there were people sleeping on the stairways, people sleeping on the rooftops. One person was sleeping outside her door with a knife under her chair. And so what I need my officers to do is do good old-fashioned verticals. You need to walk up and down the stairs, see who's in the building. If they're not there, they need to get out of the building. So, Chief, if we're not doing that, I need who's housing here?
Green.
Not housing police. We can come. Yes. Okay.
Answer for everybody. Absolutely. Just in terms of, I'm sorry you feel that way. We don't forget about housing. I'm sitting here before the meeting started. I'm sitting here crunching numbers about the new class that's coming out, and of course, graciously, we're going to get extra 1,600 officers in 2025. I can't wait for that, because it's going to really help out all of the commands, including PSA 6. We're not going to forget PSA 6. We're going to make sure they get their extra officers as well. I know your CO is right over there, right? So we'll make sure that, Juan, we'll make sure that we're hitting the verticals in the buildings that we need, all right? If you need some help, all right, even on days you're short, you need some help. The precincts, they're supposed to help out too, all right? Precincts help out the PSAs. PSAs help out the precinct. So if we're short, well, we make sure the respective commands, go over there. The precincts get to stop and do a vertical. That's what we do. Our cops on the precincts, they do a vertical in transit. They do a they do a vertical in the development. They do a directed patrol down in transit. This is how we help. This is how we create an atmosphere where people are seeing more cops, all right? Everybody pitches in. Nobody says, I'm the precinct, I'm transit, I'm housing. This is one city. We all chip in. So we'll make sure if we need to increase some of the increase visibility, we'll make sure we do that. In terms of, I just spoke to Kaz, we do have a requisition of new vehicles coming in. Something happened last year. This year we have a requisition of new vehicles, so all the precincts will be getting a little benefit from that.
Why don't have vans? I don't understand.
The reason why you may see I wouldn't say a shortage in vans is that we take the vans, we bring them to a mobilization point on Randall's Island. And what we do is we build mobile field forces, areas that we're seeing a small uptick in crime. We bring officers in from all around the city. They go to Randall's Island, they get put into the vans, and they go to other areas throughout the city for their post for the day. That's why there's a small shortage in some of the commands when you see the vans.
But also, if there's, like I said, and Juan, if there's a special need, if the van goes for mobile field force, but there's a special need, you got to reach up to the borough, reach up to Ruel, and just say we have a special need. We can get vans. We can sometimes, we'll move vans around. Right.
We need to do an analysis of where our vans are, because I don't want the mindset to be, okay, it's housing, we're going to have a lesser amount. She shouldn't be saying she's not having vans. That can't happen, because I see a whole lot of precincts with a lot of vans. So we need whatever we need to do to take that away, to have those vans there. We need to get that done.
I'll take a look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And they got to do good old-fashioned verticals. Got to get in the building. Got to walk up and down the stairs. You know, these guys need to exercise anyway. You know, they got to get up inside the stairs, go on the rooftops. They got to do this good old-fashioned verticals, and they got to be unafraid of asking, do you live here? What are you doing here? You can't hang out in the hallways. You're not going to be selling your weeds. You're not going to be doing, all of that madness. They got to do good old-fashioned, walking up and down the building. And the cannabis issue is a real issue. I mean, I smell weed everywhere now. And our children are high all the time. All my teachers are telling me their children are coming in high all the time. Now, we closed down 1,200 illegal cannabis shops. We're going to continue to do that, to close them down and stop them from reopening. The police was able to coordinate with the sheriff's department, because we didn't have enough sheriffs doing it, to close them down and go after that illegal street cannabis that we're seeing. But it's, we passed the legislation. We didn't want to criminalize cannabis. We passed the legislation, but we got to think differently about it. There's certain locations people, just like we don't allow people to smoke anywhere, we need to look at where people need to be smoking cannabis as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for being here.
Next table.
And I'm sorry, NYCHA. What is that? What is the capital hole that we're dealing with in NYCHA?
$80 billion, sir.
You hear that number? Yeah. Our budget is only 100 and something billion. We have an $80 billion hole in NYCHA. And every year people say the cavalry is coming. That's not the cavalry. That's TAPS. NYCHA is dying. That's why we were able to get the first land trust passed. And we're voting on it, because we got to think differently of how we get federal dollars. The federal government abandoned NYCHA. We were not getting the money. And if we don't turn that around, we'll be sitting here year after year. We've been aggressive. We're doing voting right now for the land trust so we get federal dollars to address that budget, an $80 billion budget. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
How
Thank
are you?
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I want to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for leading the city that I love, that I've lived in my whole life. I'm not used to this kind of a job, and you guys are all used to it, so please bear with me if I have to read my notes.
Good.
So thank you, commissioners and elected leaders, and mostly thank you, NYPD, for continuing to keep our neighborhoods safe and keeping our city safe. We greatly, greatly appreciate all your hard work. My name is Maria D'Angelo, and I'm a co-founder with this table of a group called One City Rising, and we are a grassroots community group, really hard, very committed New Yorkers who really want to see this city thrive. So it's amazing that you've been doing all the great work you've been doing, given that you've had a hostile city council, judges and legislators in Albany who aren't helping you, and other very big challenges that are really quite unfair and that are preventing you from doing the great work that you've been doing. So it's just amazing that you've done so much. So we're all Upper West Siders who have experienced a real loss of public safety here on the Upper West Side, as Gail Brewer, our council member, has pointed out before. And frankly, I've lived in this neighborhood 45 years. I've never experienced it this badly, and I've been here for a really long time. I've been in a holdup in the early 90s. I've had lots of challenges. I was sucker punched just a few months ago in Central Park while walking my dog. So everyone at my table in my group are really concerned about our safety for our families and ourselves. And people at our table experience some problems with some specific areas like 79th and Broadway, a nonstop hotspot, and other areas in the neighborhood. So what we're seeing is a real failure in policy, which we don't see coming from the mayor's office, in providing help for people with mental illness, drug addiction, and people recently decarcerated from prison. As we have seen from the recent stabbing of 3 innocent people who were just going about their work and their daily lives, by being stabbed by somebody who was decarcerated and put in a facility without proper oversight or accountability. So we feel that the city is just not addressing this mental health crisis that is making our streets more dangerous. And then to add to this, the Coalition for the Homeless's new report, 42% of people entering the shelter system are prison releases from elsewhere. They have little connection to the neighborhood, and they're going into shelters with little oversight, with no metrics for accountability from the providers. And our district, the Upper West Side, has already ranked 7th in having the most shelters before COVID, yet we keep seeing new shelters. We have the Calhoun School that is recently announced that they're converting to another shelter in our neighborhood, and it's owned by private equity interests. Building is not worth, sold for $14 million. There's a big contract on it. So my question, and it took a while, thank you, is what policy changes do we need to fix this problem, and how can we, the community, help you make sure that we get the things we need to bring our city back? Thank you.
I love that. And you, Park Slope, Cobble Hill, parts of Crown Heights, all of these communities that are doing well historically. And you're right, I looked at the numbers last week, and these upticks, the shootings, the random acts of violence, just a public display. It has to be traumatizing. It would be traumatizing for me. And it's a real issue. And the erosion that you're talking about didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight. It was just a slow erosion of the public safety principle. And I'm different from every other mayor. Not no mayor in the history of the city was ever on patrol. I've been on patrol. And I can see the feeders that will continue crime problems. And we don't get this fixed, we're going to lose DAs, we're going to lose probation officers, we got a critical mass for correction officers, we're going to lose our police officers. We have the biggest classes that we've had in 2005. They're getting ready to come to retirement age. You're going to see, folks, an erosion of public safety in the city like you've never seen before. Nobody wants to do the public safety work. And we have to turn that around. And we don't have to be punitive in the actions of doing so. So we get ready to close Rikers Island, right? We're going to build 4 more new jails. We're just downsizing the big Rikers into mini Rikers. Instead of taking one of those jails that several people have been saying over and over again, and I've been asking them to do, let's take one of those jails and turn them into a state-of-the-art psychiatric facility. You got 51% of the inmates at Rikers Island have mental health illness. 18 to 20% have severe mental health illness. So why not do a psychiatric facility instead of building a new jail, and a psychiatric facility where we can have the state-of-the-art that we're proud of to give people the care. When we closed these psychiatric facilities years ago, we throw them to the streets. People walking down the block with no shoes on, 19 degrees weather, yelling at ourselves. We wait until they do something illegal, then we take them to Rikers. That just makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. And so sitting down in rooms like this and having a smaller group where we can zero in on some of the policies that we believe we need to do and have your voices added to it. But I wasn't kidding when I said all of our judges need to be here. They need to see the results of turning someone back into the street with 2 open gun arrests and let them go and do another gun arrest. These policies are impacted on the ground. Now, we have to do our role. I spoke with the new commissioner, Commissioner Tisch, and say we need to do an analysis of all of our police personnel and see where they're assigned. I don't need a gun and shield to put barriers up. Why you got to be in the barrier detail? Everybody got to get back on patrol. We need an all hands on deck. You have a gun, a shield. You're not dealing with a medical issue. You need to be back on patrol. Everyone needs to be back on patrol so that we don't have shortages of police personnel. I want my people in the precincts. And that is what Commissioner Tish is going to do. She's going to do an analysis of all of these units. Cops are masters. As good as they are at fighting crime, they're masters at hiding out somewhere. We got to find them, go desk by desk, unit by unit, and say, what are you doing? And even if you are doing an assignment inside, then you got to give me 2 days a week when you're going out and do patrol. Everybody has to get back into the game of doing patrol so you don't have a decrease in population. And that is our focus. And we have to deal with, here's what has hijacked our narrative. 3 things. Random acts of violence. Nothing shakes us more than a random act of violence. Walking down the block and being punched in the face. Or in the subway station, someone pushes you to the subway track. Someone slashing you for no reason. Random act of violence. Random acts of violence is connected to the second problem we have, severe mental health illness. All of these cases, we had a case yesterday, was it yesterday, when the 70-something-year-old person was shoved to the track? 72-year-old. The severe mental health is causing many of the random acts of violence. They go together. And that's why we want to be proactive to take them off the streets before they carry out a random act of violence. And the third is repeated offenders. Those 3 are the monsters of our cities in the actions that comes from it. Not giving people the help that they need because they got severe mental health before they commit a crime, and zeroing in on the repeated offenders. That's hurting the narrative of our city and is shaking our consciousness that any day we can feel as though we're a victim of a crime. So I got to get the cops back on your streets. Someone mentioned 79th Street. We need to look into that, Chief. Okay, what are the areas? Part of the patrol deployment should come from the community. You know, they know what they're feeling. Nothing worse than somebody saying, you know, I used to have an uncle, I thought he was 8 foot tall, but he probably was just 6 foot. I was a little boy. He used to squeeze my hand, and I would say, that's her. He said, boy, that doesn't hurt you. How you going to tell me what I'm feeling? So I don't want to tell you what you're feeling. If you're saying 78th Street, 79th Street is a problem, we need to deploy cops over there and make you feel better.
We have to do a better job making you feel safer. Again, good evening. I'm Chief Stevenson. I'm the Borough Commander of Manhattan North. You know, when we ended last year in Manhattan North, we ended in record numbers below the prior year. And I said to myself, how are we going to repeat last year? And this year, we're ending the year again down in overall crime, down in violence, and up in quality of life enforcement. And what the mayor spoke about is the random acts of violence that causes people to feel unsafe because it gets a lot of attention. But when you look at the Upper West Side, Central Park, the 2-0 precinct, the 2-4 precinct, and the 2-6 precinct, when you combine those 4 commands, you're actually down in overall crime. Now, we're seeing a slight spike in the 2-0 precinct. And again, that's the precinct where random acts of violence, emotionally disturbed folks, unprovoked, slapping, punching, and taking items from people. Those we have to address properly. Again, I have my inspector here. She can talk a little bit more specific, again, about what she's doing to address it. They're not being unaddressed. The cops are taking it very serious. The commanding officers every day sit down, analyze, and making sure that they are deploying properly. We have to do a better job to make you feel safer. Inspector, you want to just talk a little bit about what you're doing in the 2-0 to address some of these conditions?
They're all wonderful, even the mayor.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Gail. So I have 12 new assigned rookies. I've strategically deployed them on the main corridor on Broadway. I weekly analyze with my team of what needs to be done and shifting the resources where it's needed to address quality of life conditions, crimes, and concerns of the public safety. I did have an uptake. I have had random acts of violence against people just randomly walking down the streets, getting punched. I happily say most of the cases have been closed out with the help of my team and also the squad. The squad has invested heavily on trying to apprehend these perpetrators that have caused violence, unnecessary violence to the public. There is no pattern in the sense of they're all different people, but the only common denominator is the mental illness. They come from all different areas. There's not one concentration area that they're all coming from, and they're not necessarily all here. It's some here, some there, other boroughs, unfortunately, but we do due diligence on trying to apprehend all these people to suppress the violence that is inflicted on the community.
Dr. Wright, why don't you talk about some of the stuff we're doing, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, what we're doing around the mental health that we're seeing. Something happened after COVID. It just seemed to have spiked, but some of the things we're doing.
Thank you, Brother Mayor. So many of the concerns that you're talking about, I can say the underlying effect is trauma. You mentioned COVID, and that's in every city in this country that dealt with that. And what is important is the statistics tell us that people that have serious mental illness, they're not the most common perpetrators of violence, but because they're a small number and they have large, very visible and public displays, it becomes conflated with everybody that commits a crime has a mental illness. That's not true. Okay, so there are people in our families, in our homes, in our churches, in our masjids, in our synagogues, everywhere. There's a community that have mental illness, and they're not walking around punching people. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, as the mayor pointed out, but those who do, we have programs that we're working together with H&H. We're getting more housing. We have 12,100 supportive housing units that are coming. We need to do more. We need to have more services so that when we do those involuntary removals, that we can actually put them in places where they can receive treatment. As the mayor stated, you can't just take someone off the street and then not put them somewhere where they can receive help. So we're working diligently to do that. We work with NYPD to do the walkthroughs in the blocks. We have partnerships with our social service agencies, and we work together. The police officers are doing everything they can do. And as we continue to work together, we need to make sure we have housing, we need to have treatment, we need to make sure that treatment is focused, we need to understand the impact of trauma, we need to understand the disinvestment that goes on in communities that causes trauma, the underlying. When you think about the impact of trauma, think about it's not individual trauma, it's community trauma, as you've stated. We used to have community efficacy, meaning that we took care of one another, we were able to help one another. When you disinvest and you remove resources from a community, now we have community trauma, not just individual trauma. So treatment, housing, support, working with NYPD, all of those things are happening together. Working with health and hospitals, we're doing all of this together. But Mayor, we need to do more, and we're going to do more.
Thank you for that. Doctor, I just think you're right. I mean, we need to become trauma identifiers to see what people are going through trauma, and think about these employees, man. These 300,000 employees that we have, particularly in DOHMH, HRA, they went from COVID, watching their own family or working all the time, these police officers, EMTs, then they went into migrants. These are the same population. The trauma that they are experiencing, and there's sometimes I'm on the Zoom and my team is talking, and I said, listen, take a moment, and let's just do some breathing exercises, because you can see the trauma that these city employees are going through. Hours upon hours. Think about it, vicarious trauma. Every day, all day, you're seeing the worst that's happened to New Yorkers. That stuff impacts you. That impacts you. So, thank you, Doctor.
Sir.
Yes. I'm sorry. No, go, Molly. Speaking of a hard job.
Hi, I'm Molly Wasser Park. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Social Services. I want to talk just a minute about how we approach street outreach. So DHS, together with our not-for-profit partners, including Goddard, Riverside, have 400 street outreach workers. We're out 24/7. I think, I think that might be the hardest job in New York City, right? It is rain and snow and everything else. And you're talking with people who have fallen through every crack that there is to fall through, right? They have really been dropped by every level of society. In New York City, 95% of the people experiencing homelessness are sheltered, which is orders of magnitude different than other places in the country. But the 5% who are unsheltered, right, they have been failed by everybody. So we're out there, we're trying to build a trust relationship. Sometimes it takes, dozens, even hundreds of times before somebody is willing to come inside. Has been discussed a number of times, right? We can't make anybody come inside. We cannot say, you know what, you don't belong here, you must come to shelter, you must go to the hospital, except in really rare circumstances. So one of the things that we've done is really try and make sure that we have sites that are right for people who are experiencing chronic unsheltered homelessness. In this administration, we've opened hundreds of safe haven beds, which are low barrier, really designed for the people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Now, we aren't a hospital system, we aren't medical care, but there are clinicians on site. We're really there to meet people where they are, to get them off the street. And one of the things that I can say is that we've had something like 1,200 people go from those low barrier safe havens into permanent housing, because that's the goal for everybody. So continuing to invest, as my colleague said, in supportive housing. So we are doing everything, starting from the outreach all the way through the housing. There's always more to do. Please call 311. We're not, 400 people is a smallish force, right? So we're not going to show up 10 minutes later, but we use that data to know where we need to send people and where we need to invest in the future.
Molly has been a real hero these last 2 years and 10 months, particularly around the migrants and asylum seekers. We were getting 8,000 migrants a week, 16,000 every 2 weeks, 30-something thousand a month, all times of the night. She had to figure out where we're going to put them, where they're going to stay. It was unbelievable what her and her team did. I mean, an unsung hero in our city. When I became mayor, January and February, I went into the streets to go to all the encampments. We had encampments everywhere. And when I went inside to talk to the people inside the encampment, I saw human waste, drug paraphernalia, schizophrenics, bipolar. And when I went back to the team, I said, listen, we can't live like this. Everybody told me, Eric, don't do it. You'll never win the homeless battle. Never. So don't even try it. And we made an agreement that we were going to take all the encampments down and put people into care. We were beat up. We were beat up. People said, no, people have a right to sleep on the street with no shoes at 13-degree weathers and yell and scream and walk the street. I said, like hell they do. That's what it took for us to, you don't see what's happening here in other cities. Go look at these encampments in other cities and look at here, because we were willing to take the heat to get it done.
Hi, good evening. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you. My name's Lauren Boldinger-Schultz. I am a New York native. I grew up in Brooklyn, 63rd Precinct. I now live here in the 20th Precinct. And I'm sitting at the Concerned Moms table. So, Mayor Adams, the growing number of homeless and migrant shelters, like we've just been exhausting talking about on the Upper West Side, especially between 80th and 93rd Street on Amsterdam, has really raised serious public safety concerns. We talked about the NYPD data about all of the crime rates up, robbery, burglary, assault, and the most recent one, 250% up for gun violence, and the violence, the mental health crises, the drug use, it's all increasing, and it's all visible here in our neighborhood. Recently, near 86th and Broadway, a homeless man threw a garbage can at my kid, and just weeks before that, it was a stabbing recently nearby. I don't know how to differentiate from my kid the guy throwing the garbage can, which is nothing. Is he going to be the guy stabbing him next time? He's 9. He's in 3rd grade. He's aware of all of this. Trick-or-treating turned dangerous with teenagers shooting each other outside of McDonald's recently. This could have been me, a woman sitting in her car on 84th Street in Broadway in broad daylight at gunpoint, car hijacked. And then, most recently, I'm a physician, and I take the subway home at night. And, I think it was maybe 9:30, close to 10 o'clock. All of a sudden, I'm walking from 79th and Broadway, coming off of the 1, and I have to walk past Zabar's up to West End Avenue, barely a block. And all of a sudden, I'm, looking behind me, and I start running. Not because someone's chasing me, because I am just really, really scared in my own neighborhood. With the numerous government housing buildings in the area, there's this urgent need for manned patrol cars to deter crime, to make me feel safer, to make our kids feel safer. What are the immediate steps that you're willing to take to restore safety and protect our families? And I still have one more question after that, please. My next question is, can you please use your strong relationship with our governor to push for the reopening of the mental health beds as she promised during her recent campaign? Additionally, we know that Bob Holden introduced a bill to reopen Creedmoor, which provide critical help to so many in desperate need. How can you, with the support of concerned residents like us, help push these initiatives forward to address the mental health crisis in our city?
Both those incidents were horrific. I don't know what I would do. Someone throws a garbage can at Jordan.
It's a garbage can. It's not that big, but it's really scary for kids.
It becomes a traumatizing experience. Molly, can we talk about some of the shelters? And part of the problem is that we have far too many electeds that don't want to do their share. We tried to open one shelter in Brooklyn, and it was an uproar. Hundreds of people were in the streets, laying down in the street. I said, you have one. All these other communities, when I go up to the Bronx, Salamanca, he has 33. Everyone must share this issue. And I tell the team, listen, protest me. Call me whatever you want. You can all share your issue. Everyone needs to share this issue. We can't overburden communities. Now, it's important that where they are located, we have to have the presence to do the services and make sure that we don't have the loitering. We make sure people are not using drugs, sitting on your porch, injecting themselves, defecating on our streets. That can't come with it. And so if we identify a location that's doing that, we have to combine all of our efforts not to make it happen. Hold on, Mommy.
Going back to that for a second, there's a lot of talk that I was here during COVID. I worked during COVID. I was here watching our streets get flooded with all of these migrant shelters and the homeless shelters. And I've been here on the Upper West Side almost 15 years. I've never seen anything like it, what happened from COVID. And we were fighting and writing letters and saying, you can't keep putting shelters here. You can't keep taking our hotels. And I felt like the Upper West Side got beat up with all of it here. And this has been spiraling down. And now the most recent one that I'm hearing is the methadone clinic on the park by 59th Street, where my kids play baseball. I've had enough. I go to other neighborhoods. I know they're bad. My husband works up at a hospital in the Bronx. They got abused. They're getting abused also. It's not just here. We want to help. How can we help you?
No, thank you for that. And I've never been at one community meeting when we said that, hey, we got to open one of these clinics, one of these shelters, one of these homeless. And people's that guy that used to be on Fonzie, I want to open it here. That's just not the reality. That's not the reality. But no community should be oversaturated. And we tried, Molly and her team tried their best to find the best location. But, our council members need to hold each other accountable. When the first month in office, I showed all our council members here where the shelters are located. And you will be blown away they have none. They have none. And that's just not acceptable. How do we do these placements, Molly?
Sure. Thank you. So first, I just want to give a little bit of landscape of homelessness in New York City. About 3/4 of the people in the shelter system are families with children, and a plurality of people experiencing homelessness are kids, right? So we talk a lot about homelessness as if it is a monolithic issue, but really mostly what we're talking about is children. In New York City, there are 1 million, literally, I have a tendency to hyperbole, but this one's true, 1 million low-income households who are rent burdened. So I really see the shelter system as the emergency room of the housing system in New York City, right? We have a 1.4% vacancy rate. And in some ways, as the shelter system's too big, it is absolutely my goal to make it smaller, but in some ways it's a miracle that it isn't bigger. What we got to do is really focus on getting people connected to permanent housing. homelessness happens. It is an emergency situation, but it should be a short-term thing where people get back on their feet. So it's something we've been really, really focused on at Department of Homeless Services. Last year, we moved 18,500 households out of shelter and into permanent housing. It was a record-breaking number, but there is still so much more to do. But we also need to make sure that we are investing in making sure that the shelters that we do have are quality places, not only for the clients, but for the community. So every shelter has a community advisory board. I will say that there's some of the emergency sites don't, but any permanent shelter has a community advisory board. We want to hear from the community. Sites have a 24/7 number where issues can be reported in real time. We are available. I am available. We will respond to issues if we have them. But we've really also been trying to think about how we upgrade the physical space so that, how many places can we have self-contained outdoor space, right? So if somebody's going to go outside to smoke, that they aren't doing it on the street. What do we need to do to make sure that for people who are in that emergency situations, that they can be not only in a place where they can recover, but that they are also being good neighbors. I will say every client is expected to sign a good neighbor policy, and we will respond when we know that we have issues. So, again, we are available and we are accessible, and I'm happy to talk afterwards offline if there's specific issues that we need to follow up on. Mr. Mayor, to your question about how sites are identified, we have an open-ended RFP up on our website. Providers, not-for-profit providers, bring us sites. We will do an assessment to see whether or not the site is viable. That's a land use issue, but also that level of saturation. Whether or not the provider is equipped to provide the level of services that we expect, whether or not the site is cost effective. We want to provide good services, but we also have to be good stewards of fiscal resources. So it is a complex process. We've closed a lot of subpar sites over the last several years. That includes what were known as the cluster shelters, which were apartment buildings. They were very poor quality. They didn't offer services, and they were taking housing out of the housing stock, but also some of the bigger congregate sites for single adults where again they were not being run to our standards, not up to our physical standards. So, but we have tremendous need in the city. It is a right to shelter city. It is a very low vacancy rate, and we're going to need shelters for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and
Non-for-profit, because I think the one that the lower division of Calhoun School, the 176 is private.
All shelters are operated by not-for-profit organizations. In some cases, the building is owned by the not-for-profit organization. When we are trying to do more and more of that, historically, however, and we still do some of this, that the not-for-profit leases the building from a private owner.
I do this feeding on Wednesdays, and when I started street feeding of people, when I first started, it was just a group of homeless people. And as the weeks went on, it was working adults. People are hurting in this city. And when you add the 60,000 we had in our homeless shelter with 220,000, that's almost 300,000. That is why we put the 30-day plan in place. We said we can't build a permanent 300,000 housing, and 170,000 of the 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers went on to the next step of their journey. Some said we want to go back to our countries of origin. Some said we never wanted to come here in the first place. Some found their way like other immigrants. And we were beat up for putting that 30-day program in place. We said, you can't stay here forever? And people, when they were challenged with finding their way, you know what they did? They found their way. 170,000 people said, we said, you got 30 days, man. You're a single adult. You got 30 days. Other immigrants found their way. Everybody has to find their way in this country. And they found their way. Where am I?
Next table 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And please.
Yeah, grab the mic.
And I'm sorry, please forgive me if I leave during your answer.
It's all good. It's all good.
My friend's going to tell me. So many of the things that we discussed were addressed from people and from you discussing electric vehicles, and we're very concerned about that. But let me go through with what we feel has not been addressed yet. For a second. Okay, here we go. Okay, the city of Yes is a great step for building new housing. How can we align everyone to incentive upgrading current housing. People aren't feeling safe in housing, and current providers can't afford to do more. Currently, for many small landlords, property taxes is more than rent roll and pushing people to bankruptcy. How about instead incentivize people to provide more voucher housing safely, and how to get better provisions for the people in NYCHA housing? And also,
you must be a teacher.
Since I had to wait a long time, a social worker. Okay, so in terms of some of the issues, in terms of safety that we feel also need to be addressed aside from the others, cameras are very effective in helping find perpetrators. Of course, holding people to consequences goes along with finding them. Currently on the Upper West Side, many of us participate in the participatory budgeting, which has given us some cameras, but I feel very insulted, I personally, when I have to vote for cameras for my safety, when that becomes something for participatory budgeting and not something that the city is providing with my tax dollars in general. We're in competition with, and I was a social worker in the public schools, with things like providing a science room, fixing a leaky sink in a public school. I'd like to know why our city is not providing more money for cameras. I'd like to know why we don't have more foot patrols, even given, I think we'd like to know, even given the fact that there are fewer police. And also, historically, the Upper West Side was a haven for Jewish people that came here after the Holocaust. One of the things I love about this community is it is now very diverse, which is wonderful. But as a Jewish person who has lived here since 1970, many of us feel the need to hide our identity. Anti-Semitism is rampant. I'm not talking about Columbia University. I'm talking about on our city streets. And I would hope that police and law enforcement are given training in what is an anti-Semitic act, so some of the things that go on can be properly addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that sort of connects with what was said earlier, the immediate response. What could we do immediately? We're going to look at some of those problematic areas and make sure police are being deployed there to make sure that we coordinate with communities, that we do use cameras. Kaz Daughtry, the Deputy Commissioner of Operation, what he has done with cameras, with drones, with technology to really properly identify those who are committing crimes and bring them to justice. That's how we caught the shooter that killed the insurance worker, CEO, executive. It is, but the participatory budgeting process is an amazing process. It allows people to be engaged and look at how do they want to spend their tax dollars in their community. We love it. We think it's a great idea. We have expanded it under this administration. Anti-Semitism in this area. Do we have the numbers in this precinct?
For the 2-0 precinct. We're down 19%, so 13 versus 16 for the anti-Semitic hate crime.
And so we give you that number not to tell you that we want to say, you feel what you feel. And I don't think there has been a mayor that has been more clear on fighting anti-Semitism like I have been. I don't think there has been another mayor that I have been extremely clear. We don't play the games of saying in our hate crime units of, listen, don't say it's anti-Semitism or not. No. We look at the crime and we report it. We're not going to hide behind that. Now, I think there's things we should do. There should be a no plea bargaining for any type of hate crime. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, attacking Sikhs, attacking LGBTQ plus communities. I think the DA should send a clear message. There's no plea bargaining. You commit the crime, we're not going to drop down in a plea bargain. We have to have a real conversation in our schools about the hate that we're seeing that's pervasive. And we need to go after social media. Social media is really pushing this hate, not only in the city, but across the country, if not internationally. And then we need to deal with Lamona. What is Lamona? Lamona right here is doing. Lamona is doing this thing called breaking bread, building bonds. We thought we were going to do just 1,000 dinners across the city. When people sit around the table, they all come from a different walk of life, different culture, different understanding, and they're doing something revolutionary. They're talking to each other. This has to be a ground up, like this table here, this ground up group and organization. There needs to be a ground up. We can't just police our way out of anti-Semitism and hate. We have to, we have to be honest with ourselves. This is a diverse city, but we live in silos. We live among each other. We're not comfortable with other groups. The real education for our children is not in the sterilized environment of a classroom. It is in gatherings of learning about the beauty of the diversity in the city. So I would encourage us for you to reach out to Lamona and you do a breaking bread, building bonds. Let's bring folks together so that we can sit down and start having a real conversation. The real gift of living in New York is our diversity. And we need to celebrate that. We're going to come to you. Let me just make sure we go to the table, and I'm not going to forget you, okay? You have my word. I'm not going to forget you, okay? Yes.
One of the questions was, how do we address the costs of providing housing? Because right now we have a lot of units. We have City of Yes, which is great for building new stuff. We don't have an answer for how we're going to bring back dilapidated, broken units where owners can't bring them online. We have unlocking doors. If your rent's over $1,300, you can't get money. We have unlocking doors. It's $25,000. It doesn't help you renovate a unit that takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it back online.
Okay, listen, a bill was passed in Albany, a deal with MCI and IAI, that which I think was ideally was a good concept, but in reality, when someone moves out of an apartment, if they can only spend a small amount to renovate it, many people are not doing the renovations that are needed. What we knew we had to do, we have to improve the inventory. We had a 1 as Molly stated, we had a 1.4% vacancy rate. So we had to get changes in Albany. We had to get changes in the city council with the City of Yes. I thank the council of folks who participated. We have to build more. If the supply and demand states, if you have a low stock, that's going to increase the price. We have to build more, and I think we need to re-examine the MCI and the IAI decisions that were made up in Albany to make sure that we can continue to renovate these apartments after people move out of these apartments. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
I'm nervous all the time.
I wanted to talk to you about the safety and security of a proposed shelter on West 74th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Cushman and Wakefield sold the Calhoun School to a poverty profiteer, Bayrock Capital, that has over a dozen shelters in the city. And their business model is to make money off our taxpayer dollars. It's unfortunate that the school was not turned into the much-needed affordable housing that we need on the Upper West Side. At this point, there's been no safety outreach to the community or conversation about the 146 people that are going to be occupying a small footprint building. And our concern is the amount of money that's flowing through the nonprofit organization to the private equity firm and this business model that they have. We've written a letter detailing this that I would like to give you. But thank you, and thank you for being here.
You want to talk about that, Molly? This is a Molly night.
I had a feeling. So familiar with the site, absolutely. So listen, we have two ways of creating shelters, and apologies when I get a little bit wonky, but one version is the not-for-profit that is operating the shelter actually does the development ground up. The contract that we enter into with them is long-term. They can use that to secure debt and to do their own development. That's great. Those take a while. There aren't that many not-for-profits who are both good at operating shelter and doing that kind of financing and development. It's both of those are complicated and hard work, and two very different skill sets. So we are building that kind of pipeline. We have 43 of those that are either open or somewhere in the pipeline. But the reality is that there's lots of good organizations that either don't have that capacity right now or have an opportunity to do something, but it's a different timeline. Real estate in this country, not just in this city, right, is a for-profit business, right? People make money. That is the nature of the game. We look at the not-for-profit in this case, yes, is going to be leasing the site from a private owner. That is a model that exists fairly widely. We look at costs very, very carefully. It's not just DHS. I answer to my Office of Management and Budget, and they certainly don't let us get away with anything that they don't feel is appropriate. So the rents have to be appropriate. We are monitoring that closely. But yes, the not-for-profit is going to be leasing the space from a private owner. With respect to community engagement, the site will have a community advisory board. We will absolutely do a community meeting. We typically do them a little bit closer to opening, but we can certainly work with the council member if we want to do something sooner than that. And we will be very focused on making sure that there are both adequate wraparound services as well as adequate security.
The housing crisis has been around a long, long time. And in the 2 years and 10 months, we knew we had to build more housing. Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer and Dan Gorodnick over at Planning, we broke records year one and year two. And what we were able to accomplish up in Albany was so important. Housing conversion, looking at office spaces, converting to housing, hotel spaces, etc. And then the city of yes. So it's going, 80,000 units in 15 years. It's going to take a while to fix this housing mess that we were in. And too many children are growing up in housing. If you grew up in housing, in homeless, you're less likely to graduate from high school. And if you don't educate, you're going to incarcerate. We know we have to attack this problem. And we went head on in the 2 years and 10 months. We don't want people growing up into shelters. And there needs to be incentive to get out of shelters and not to stay in shelters. We need to incentivize getting into permanent housing. So it's a real challenge.
That's what we want here.
Yeah.
We want the permanent housing. People want the permanent housing and not the shelter.
Right.
And I support a lot of shelters.
Right.
Get a lot of trouble for that. But in this case,
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the entire neighborhood wants a permanent housing, and that's what we're asking for.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, we did look at that. I mean, I'm not the Housing Finance Agency, but we absolutely looked at that. Given the footprint of the site and what it would take to reconfigure it to be permanent housing, what you would get is a fairly small number of units that are really cost prohibitive. In all likelihood, it really couldn't be affordable housing given that footprint. What it would be market rate housing. Now, maybe there's advantages to that too, but I really see, shelter and housing as an and, not an or. I am desperate for the day when it is an or, but given the vacancy rate, given the number of people who are low income and rent burdened in this city, we're going to be in a place where it is an and for a long time. Just to build off of the mayor's comments, there's 10,000 households in the shelter system who have a voucher, where the city has said, if you can find a place to live, we are happy to pay your rent. And there isn't a place for people to go, right? So that is with people doubled up all across the city, right? We are facing a housing emergency. It is a yes to housing, yes to shelter, because the need is so dire. I very much hope we get to the place where we are doing housing instead of shelter, but we are a long way from that given the depth of the need.
And I think and the city council, to their credit, they increased the rents that our FEPS vouchers are allowed. And I think that, listen to those numbers. We have 10,000 families with vouchers that can't find a place. It's what? That's a mileage. Go ahead, sir.
Why not allow changing and zoning if you're going to accept? If you build affordable, oh, sorry. Hi. Hi, Mr. Mayor. How about changing zoning if you build affordable housing and accept vouchers, so you can actually build up? Wouldn't that solve the problem?
That's included in City of Yes. So it's I can't remember the official terminology, but basically if you build affordable, you get higher density. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. See how smart you are. You were right in the head. And your BP has been really big on being willing to think differently about housing and finance. We're looking at city spaces, and we're telling all of our city agencies we need you to look at how you can build housing on city spaces, police lots, on top of libraries. We're looking at everywhere to build more houses. I'm sorry?
I reached out on a topic related, and no one got back to me.
Reach out to, what was the question on the library? Got it.
We'll follow up with you afterwards.
Yeah.
We have people at the different tables, so we'll follow up after.
Yeah, but that's an important piece, because if you reached out, you know who you reached out to, they should have gotten back to you, because we want to build on type of libraries. Huh? Okay, so we can sit on Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer, because she's doing an analysis for me, and Andrew Kimball over at EDC. They are doing an analysis of all of our streets and city-owned property to come up with how do we build more housing based on that. So Andrew Kimball, all right, Fred, connected with someone on Andrew Kimball's team. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having this tonight and hosting all of us. Appreciate it. My name is Lucas Liu. I've been an Upper West Side resident for about 30 years now. So I've seen the Upper West Side go through its cycles. Two comments and then a question. To add on to somebody who had mentioned about the homeless and mental health issues on the street, just wanted to add a couple extra streets that maybe could have the police go by, and maybe, I don't want to just say push them off somewhere else, because that just makes it somebody else's problem, but maybe just get a little bit better behavior. 86 from Columbus to West End, Amsterdam 86 to 88th, West End Ave 84th to 86. It's the same people. Right. So another comment from someone at our table, the streets 81st, 82nd, 83rd between Broadway and West End, it's kind of dark. She was mentioning how at night when it's dark out, she's a little concerned walking down the street alone. And now to my question. There's a lot of talk about the bikes, the e-bikes, the mopeds, a lot of them belonging to delivery people, going the wrong way in the bike lanes, and, making that last half block they need to make their delivery. They ride on the sidewalks, they go the wrong way on the street. Is there a way to get police on bikes when the weather's, acceptable, to prevent or to deter that type of behavior? And it's getting more police out on the street, which then in and of itself is a bit of a deterrent. Is there a way we could get something like that?
Yeah, first, I ride around at night and I harass my team. How many times I call you, send you a picture? Why is this shelter here? Why is this encampment here? 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. When I first became mayor, I was seeing it all over the place. And I used to wake them up in the middle of the night, send them a picture. I don't see it as much as before. If you have locations like that, let us know, because we want to make sure that is addressed, and we should not have any dark corridors. So if you're seeing places like that, make sure we get there and make sure the lighting is proper, even if we have to do an analysis if we need additional more lighting. I was shocked that we didn't hear a question on the bikes and the delivery, because I have not had one town hall where it didn't come up, particularly with older adults. It got out of control. After COVID, everyone started ordering in, and our city did not adjust to the proliferation of the delivery bikes, the scooters, the three-wheelers, all of it. And so what I told the team to do, Deputy Commissioner Daughtry and others, we had to come up with a real plan to deal with these bikes. And we're doing it on several levels. Number one, we're going out to the delivery app companies and say you have to be held responsible. for your delivery. We gave them a good deal, so they no longer had to rush. Because at one time they was on this timing thing that they had to rush and to get as many deliveries as possible. We had a good deal with them, the deputy mayors, the commissioner of workers protection, and we were able to settle with the app companies to pay them more, and so they're not speeding through our streets. But we also need help from Albany. I'm a big believer. These guys have to be registered. You need insurance because you get hit by one of these bikes, these scooters, etc. Who do you blame? You know, good friend Michael Miller, he was hit. He still have a rod in his leg because of that. And so we know we have to crack down on speeding. We have to look at the bikes that are being sold with these bogus batteries, lithium-ion batteries. We have to have a full, comprehensive approach to this overproliferation of these bikes that are on our road right now. And that is what we're doing on every area, DOT, NYPD, FDNY. We're all looking at how to bring this under control. That just really ballooned overnight after COVID. So we're with you. Yes, go ahead. Here's something you wanted to add.
Just quick, you know, in the time, the one time I did have to call 911 about a mentally ill person threatening people on the street, and another time about a mentally ill person ripping over garbage bags and dumping it on the street. The response time by the NYPD and the Department of Sanitation was great. So I just want to say thank you to Department of Sanitation and the precinct on the Upper West Side for, you know, showing up really quickly.
No. This team is made up of some good, hard-working people. But you know, Molly says something that's very important. What many people don't realize, we can't force people to get off the streets. We can't force them. We can't. You know, if they're standing out, we're not allowed. We could go interact with them, but we can't force them. And what happens often, if you're dealing with severe mental health issue, you have to build some serious trust. You have to go back over and over again. I was in the subway system 2 days last week, and the amount of time my scout workers and my path workers, they have to constantly visit people over and over and over again for them to build that trust. And some people would tell you just straight up, I don't want to leave. And there's nothing you can do about it. So we have to just continuously, we had over 15,000 interaction. We were able to get approximately 800 people off our subway system into permanent care. But it's that constant over and over. It's not a one shot. It's not just going to a person one time and say, hey, listen, you got to come off the street. People have been broken to the level where they would rather stay on the streets. Those who can take care of themselves is fine. But if you are dealing with severe mental health issue, that's where the involuntary removal needs to kick in so we can give people the services that they need. We need help in Albany to get that bill passed so that we can execute the way we believe we ought to.
Ask the table 7.
This young lady next to you also had a question. Oh, is she doing your question or you have your? Okay.
I'm Heather Groger. I'm a nurse, a mother, and founder of Friends of the Elderly Playground Advocacy Group. So our question is, why is there no accountability for shelter placement and management on the Upper West Side? I know this has been pounded already. But on 83rd Street, you have a safe haven next to an elementary school where residents overlook the kindergarten playground from their beds. We have a picture. At this location, you can see loitering, stalking, trespassing, open drug use, and child safety and mental health issues. There are not adequate mental health professionals on site as promised. We have a victim at this very table who can give you a firsthand account. And on West 59th Street, you are actively building from the ground up a massive shelter for mentally ill, chemically addicted women next to the Gertrude Elderly Playground, as well as many elementary schools and early childhood programs. This shelter will have a Suboxone clinic open, my son is calling, a Suboxone clinic open to residents and the public, and has smoking courtyards immediately adjacent to the playground. There's a shelter serving this exact population 7 blocks away that often has empty beds. I will stress that this shelter is still in the building phase and can still be made into desperately needed affordable housing with the administration's direction. I also have to mention that despite Ms. Park mentioning the need for children to be housed, none of these shelters are for children. All the shelters that anybody has addressed are for single adults and not families. Affordable housing, which we all support and would love to have in our neighborhood, would help these children. So, to sum it up, there is great concern about public safety, particularly women and children, and fiscal accountability. Why aren't these resources being used to actually address the mental health, drug addiction, and homelessness problems versus perpetuating the corruption surrounding the homeless industrial complex?
Are you familiar with that area, Molly? It's Molly Knight.
I can certainly speak to both of the sites. So first of all, there are particular issues with the 83rd Street site. Let's follow up offline. I'm happy to give you my card. For people experiencing homelessness are here, right? Whether we like it or not, right? And this is a function not only of the real estate market, and the vacancy rate, but of many institutions, failure of many different systems, whether it's the mental health system, longstanding substance use, there's a host of growing income inequality. There's a host of reasons why people experiencing homelessness are here in our city. And we essentially have two choices, right? We can shelter them, or we can have them on our street. We should be working towards housing, absolutely, and we do every single day, right? I talked about the fact that we've gotten, 1,200 people from our safe havens into permanent housing over the last couple of years. Getting people into permanent housing is what gets me out of bed in the morning. I came from the affordable housing world, and it's something that is hugely important to me. But the idea that we're going to get somebody literally from the street corner and put them into housing that same day, right? It's just not realistic, right? We need, and I grew up in California. I go back to visit, and there's a tent on every street corner, every highway overpass. It's terrible, right? So we can, our kids. My kid grew up in New York City too. Went to New York City public schools, right? They are going to see people experiencing homelessness. The question is, do they see them on the street? Do they step over them on the sidewalk, or are we serving people in some kind of situation where they can be safer for everybody? Does that mean that we're doing everything perfectly? It absolutely doesn't. But I absolutely believe that shelter is an important part of our infrastructure until we are, really deal with systemic changes that range from massive more housing to different kinds of mental health care, to different kinds of correctional policies, to, substance use, substance treatment on demand, right? None of those things are anywhere close to what we've got right now. So we do need a crisis management system. We heard both from we shouldn't rent sites, and now we're hearing we shouldn't have the not-for-profits own the sites. Like, one way or another, we have to have a system that we can do it. Right.
Single women, and you know what? Maybe not everybody gets to live in New York City if they can't make it.
Wow.
Maybe. I'm sorry, but it's obnoxious.
Hold on, let's do one. Hold on. Let's do one at a time, folks. Go ahead. Hold on. I don't subscribe to maybe everyone should not live in New York City. I don't subscribe to that, and we don't all agree on everything. But this is not going to be a city for just the affluent and those who fall on hard times, because I lived on the verge of homelessness. Those who fall on hard times, we have an obligation to make sure we house them. That's the law. Right to shelter is the law, and we're going to follow that. Go ahead, finish it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Both of the things that I have said are true, right? Yes, a plurality of people experiencing homelessness in New York City are children. Yes, the sites we are talking about are for single adults. There are single adults who are experiencing homelessness as well. I really don't believe that it is sacrificing children. If there is a particular sightline issue, we can certainly talk about shading windows, things like that. That's something that we have done in other sites, and there are solutions that we can have. But our kids, my kid, all of our kids are going to interact with people experiencing homelessness. It is New York City. It is the reality that we live with, right? And it is a question about whether we do it in a way that is managed and controlled and with dignity, or whether the people are on the street and living in what Mayor has talked about as conditions that are not fit for any person. So, you know, I am happy to follow up on individual specific issues. There is always room that we can do for to improve. I'm never going to be the one to say that we can't, but I do believe strongly in the value of a shelter system, not only for the people who are in it, but to protect communities as a whole.
Yeah, go ahead. No, hold on. Go ahead. You're talking to the mic so everybody can hear.
Sorry, you didn't address the question or the issues at all.
Mm-hmm. Which
Okay.
one? Which one you want her to address?
Okay. You basically said the same thing you've said over and over again. So there's a bottleneck issue, correct? You have a shelter system that's full. People have vouchers. There's nowhere to put these people. So instead, you're just building more shelters and not addressing this bottleneck, which would keep people moving through the system. That's point one. Point two is I'd like to know, is secondhand smoke safe for children? You know, I think secondhand smoke safe for children because I think many of us are in healthcare and we will all agree that that is incorrect. And you are bringing that directly to the children. Not right. You're creating a problem. You're not solving a problem. Also, bringing a Suboxone clinic for not just the residents. You are bringing drug addicts from all over next to a playground. There are a lot of other places for a clinic like this. Like, you can't tell me that this is the only location in New York where you can bring this. And we all know that it's an extremely profitable business, Suboxone clinics. So I could go on, but you're really not answering the question, and you're bringing problems instead of solving them.
And you could swallow. I just wanted the first part about it, about there's a bottleneck and we're not doing anything about it. That was what City of Yes was about. We have a 1.4% vacancy rate. And if we don't build more, then we won't be able to house this we're at a housing crisis. And actually the vacancy rate is almost a functional zero for affordable housing. And as you have to be judged by your numbers. Year one, year two, we broke records in new housing that we put in place. We broke records in the number of people who got housing through the voucher program. We broke records, the number of people that went from from homelessness into permanent housing. I mean, I got to be judged by the numbers. We're not going to solve this problem of homelessness, folks, in 2 years and 11 months. Let's not kid ourselves. But when you look at what the indicators are to say, are you moving in the right direction from the housing reform that we did to the records we did in new housing, to voucher program, to homelessness, and to permanent housing, it's a clear indicator that in 2 years and 10 months, we did far less. What we did in housing, what we did with City of Yes, is more than 12 years under Bloomberg. It's more than double the 8 years under de Blasio. And we did it in 2 years and 10 months.
I'll add to that. I certainly want to make sure that do my best to address specific questions. We work very closely with our partners at the housing finance agencies. That's not traditionally the role of the Department of Social Services, but given the scope of the need, we know we can't wait for other people to solve our problems. So we've actually created a contract structure where, again, I'm going to get a little wonky, but where we are using our city FEPS vouchers. It's a project-based contract. Not-for-profits can use that, and they can use the contract to leverage debt. So we actually, in the Department of Social Services, are financing affordable housing. Never been done before. We closed on about 250 units of that over the summer. Those units are all fully occupied at this point. So we're not only are we doing something innovative, we're doing it quickly as well. You know, part of the reason why I'm saying the same thing over and over again is because it is the reality that I live, where we cannot have a choice between shelter and housing, where we have such need that we need both. With respect to the clinic that is on site, first of all, I think the best way that we can address the rampant drug use and the consequences that come with rampant drug use is by making sure that people have access to substance use treatment. There's a lot of evidence, and my colleagues here can speak more detail than I can, but a lot of evidence that when you get people into treatment, it actually does address the issues, right? That substance use does not have to be a lifelong sentence into the kind of instability that people have been talking about here. The clinic is going to be run by the same not-for-profit organization that is going to be running the shelter. So this is not a business that somebody's going to be making a lot of money off of. With respect to the outdoor space, I think we've done a lot of work with. I've had multiple meetings with local community. I'm sorry, I don't remember whether or not you were there. There've been a number of them, but. And the developer who is doing the actual physical construction, the not-for-profit that will ultimately own and run the site, making some adaptations to that outdoor space, trying to address the concerns that have been raised, also dealing with in addition to the physical changes that we're talking about making, that there will be operating issues, right? Managing the time that the space is open and things like that. So trying to be. I can circle back with you. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I know we've had a lot of conversations about hours of operation, but.
Well, let's give an opportunity.
Go ahead, finish.
We've had a lot of community meetings. I'm happy to have more community meetings about that site, right? We very often go through community board, right? Our ability. Community is a broad term, right? So our ability to personally meet with every single person is challenging. We work with the community board. They bring people. Sometimes that gets the right people to the room. It doesn't always get the right people to the room, but we're happy to take another run at it.
Now, what's the smoking part? Tell me the smoking part. What is it? What's the issue with the smoking? I'm sorry. Give me the mic.
Smoking courtyards are immediately adjacent to the playground.
So what is it? What is that? The layout?
No, it's right next to it.
Is it next to it or across?
Here's the playground.
It's on the. There is a not on ground level, but there is an contained outdoor space that is a couple of levels above the playground. It is something we've certainly had a number of conversations about, working with how we can do physical configurations to block the space, investing in technology that is smoke capturing, looking at hours of operation. So all of those things are under consideration.
So let's look at that, because something like that, we should be able to find a way to fix it. I don't want children exposed to secondhand smoke. So I want to go over there and see what it looks like, and those are things that we should be able to fix. That children are exposed to secondhand smoke, But I think Molly is like, there's nothing worse than somebody coming here, speaking of smoke, and just blowing smoke in your face. We just can't lie. We got to really, to me, I want to manage your expectation. We have a homeless crisis. And we're going to have to build these locations. We're going to have to, these are not easy conversations. And we could easily say, okay, no, we're not going to build them. But that's just a lie. We have a homeless crisis, and we've had it for a long time, and it's not new here. And I really tell people all the time, go Google San Francisco. Go Google Los Angeles. Go Google these other cities. So you don't want your children to see folks in homeless shelters? In those other cities, they don't have to worry about seeing them in other shelters. They're living on the streets. They got people all on the streets cooking, using it as public toilets, injecting themselves with drugs. You look at these other cities, and I made up my mind. We're not doing that in New York. You're not going to have these open encampments all over our city like in other cities. And we stopped it from happening, folks. That's what was starting to happen when we came into office. We saw people saying, I'm going to live on highways. They're doing it in Los Angeles. I'm going to live on street corners. I'm going to live in schoolyards. I'm going to live wherever I want. They were taking over communities. And we said, no, it can't happen. And we removed those encampments. And I drive around this city at night trying to find an encampment so I can wake them up and say, come meet me over here. And it's because of being that dogmatic, you don't see it in our cities like you see in other cities. That's what I don't want Jordan to see. I don't want Jordan walking down Broadway and seeing a bunch of tents lined up where someone is relieving themselves on the streets. But if we don't put them there, we need to put them in a place like this. So this is not an easy conversation. I wish it
Mayor,
was.
Mayor, if I could just add one thing, Mayor. Last night he called me at 12:59 to tell me about an encampment. 12:59 a.m. this morning.
And just,
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So I just to follow up very briefly, I think the issue that we are discussing is the siting of these locations adjacent to elementary schools. This is not just one, this is now two, and they're both what we are considering low barrier shelters where three, but low barrier shelters where the one on 83rd Street, there's active drug use because what Ms. Parks is describing as meeting people where they are. We have syringes being used inside. So, and I toured the facility because this is part of the community. You want to make sure that we are engaging with the people running the shelters. But the fact is that these were being built because we want to address the unsheltered population in our community, and that is not happening. And what you can see that walking up and down the Upper West Side, I think actually the unsheltered population has grown. So that is really a deep concern for all of us. But on 59th Street, as an anesthesiologist, I'm very concerned about the idea of a Suboxone clinic. While you can, yes, of course, we want to have narcotics being addressed for anyone who has an addiction. There's no debate on bringing these clinics to communities and whether or not they will also bring drug dealers. They will also bring crime. You don't just take one walk to Harlem. I think that community can tell you what has happened when methadone clinics open. That is just unfortunately what happens when these clinics do open. So the concerns of the community are real. And unfortunately, what I see is a lot of gaslighting from DHS. So I really hope that a more honest conversation can happen around the types of shelters opening and where they're opening. I also just wanted to address what you said.
I want to go to the Harlem piece. And you're right. When I walked up and down 125th Street, they had all of these state, city, all these clinics opening and dropping everyone off at 125th Street and Lexington Avenue. We went out there around 2 a.m. in the morning. The bus comes from the shelter, drop people off there, and it's just really all of those clinics are opening. And your concerns are real. Please don't feel that at any time we're saying that you're concerned about the children, your families, the stability. I'm with you. I'm with you. No one wants that disorder. We want to make sure we find an orderly way to do it. So we don't think that you are trying to not understand the reality we're dealing with. I'm with you.
And it's a huge profit business, by the way. So yes, they make a lot of money off of this.
So on the 83rd Street site, before coming to this meeting, I talked to my team. I'd asked about feedback that we'd gotten. I didn't get that. So now I've heard it. I am going to take it back. I'm going to follow up on the specifics of the site, right? It is not okay that we are not running an operation that is being a good neighbor, and we will absolutely take that back. I hear it. I believe that shelters can and should and will be good neighbors, and it is our job at DHS to make that happen. You know, this is a story that I have told to other people, actually, at a group of other Upper West Siders when I was meeting with them about one of the sites. You know, I like to run. When I need to run and it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm by myself, the route that I go takes me right by a shelter. There's light, there's activity, there is a security guard, right? So I think activity in a neighborhood is a good thing. Having buildings occupied, that there's adequate security, that we are doing our job, that is important. I hear the feedback that you've given, and I will take it back.
Thank you. Thank you. So here are the takeaways. Because we have to do short term, we have to do middle term, we have to do long term. So the takeaways from what I'm hearing is, you know, the NYCHA incident, making sure that we're going back doing good old-fashioned verticals, what have you, identify some of those streets that were shared with us. The chief and his team, they're going to go there, and we have to do observation. It shouldn't be visible disorder. The commissioner heard some of the concerns you raised around the smoking, around some of the other issues that I think are important. And so we heard you, and there has to be a real combination of how do we have all of our agencies that engage. Because if you have a shelter on your block, I was meeting with some folks out in Clinton Hill, DSNY must do a good job to keep outside clean. You know, everyone must be engaged. The police department, Molly's team, everyone must be engaged. If we're going to burden the community with a shelter, all the agencies must be in place to make sure that that place is kept clean, a lack of disorder, and holding it down right. Now, here's my only ask. Get the judges in the room. Get the lawmakers in the room. Just as you did with me, it's unfortunate that when you call me, I come. And so there's a chief judge. We have a chief judge in the state. Reach out to that chief judge and state that we're concerned about some of this reentry, this constant revolving door in our criminal justice system. We want to hear the judges. They're never in the room to talk about how we doing this. Why is a person arrested twice for gun, let out again to carry another gun? And they need to respond to that. So this is a powerful group of people. Upper West Side is the #1 voting bloc of Democrats in the country. In the country. #1. So if you're #1, when you call them to come, they need to be here. And then you need to do an analysis at all of your electeds. Do you know how many stop acts? Do you know that costs us $1.4 million in overtime? You know, so we need to be asking folks, why did you vote for that? You know, we need to be asking folks about the raise the age and the number of young people that are now getting caught up and carry guns. During the 70s, they used to give drugs to young people because they know they wouldn't be charged. So what they're doing now, they're telling the bad guys, they're telling the young people, carry the gun because you're going to be in and out. And young people are saying to us when they get arrested, I'm going to be out in a couple of hours. So we need to hold everyone accountable on the criminal justice system. There are two parts of the criminal justice system that we don't even hear from. Who's making our laws? Who's deciding when that person stands in front of them in the courtroom? They need to be in the room. And there should be a full meeting with the lawmakers and have them sit down and the strategy of impacting the job of these men and women who are up here keeping our city safe. The prerequisite to prosperity is public safety. I said that on the campaign trail. I'm living through that right now as the mayor. We must be safe. Thank you for coming out tonight.
I just want to take the time to thank Tiffany Brown, our Manhattan director, for helping put this together. And I know the mayor has to run to another event. No. That's good. And again, like the mayor said, this is a 58 community conversations because the mayor goes around to all communities.